The winter wind howled through the narrow alleyways of Mapleton, carrying snowflakes that danced like tiny ballerinas before settling on the already white-coated ground. Yasmin huddled deeper into her worn coat, her breath forming small clouds in the freezing air. Her golden hair peeked out from beneath a knitted hat, the last gift from her grandmother before everything changed. Yasmin wasn't always homeless. Once she had a home filled with warmth and laughter, but life had a way of taking unexpected turns. Now the cold streets of Mapleton were her reality, and her only possession of value was a thick patchwork blanket her grandmother had made, every square containing fragments of family memories stitched together with love. As she made her way toward the abandoned warehouse where she had found shelter for the past few nights, a strange sound caught her attention. It was faint at first, almost lost in the howling wind, but it grew more distinct as she approached the narrow gap between two buildings. A whimper, pained and frightened. Yasmin hesitated, clutching her precious blanket tighter around her shoulders. The logical part of her brain urged her to keep walking, to seek the relative warmth of her temporary shelter before the temperature dropped further. But something about that sound tugged at her heart. "Hello?" she called softly, her voice barely audible over the wind. "Is someone there?" The whimpering grew louder, followed by a weak bark. Yasmin stepped closer, peering into the shadows. A pair of amber eyes reflected the dim streetlight, and Yasmin's heart clenched. Curled against the brick wall was a large German shepherd, its magnificent coat dusted with snow, its body trembling violently. "Oh, you poor thing," Yasmin whispered, approaching slowly so as not to frighten the animal. The dog watched her warily, but made no move to run or attack. As Yasmin got closer, she could see the dog was thin, too thin, and there was no collar around its neck. "Are you lost?" she asked, knowing the dog couldn't answer but finding comfort in speaking aloud. "Or did someone leave you behind?" The dog whimpered again, and Yasmin noticed it was favoring its front paw, which was swollen and possibly injured. The temperature was dropping rapidly, and Yasmin knew that spending the night in this exposed alley could be deadly for the already weakened animal. Without hesitation, Yasmin unwrapped the patchwork blanket from her shoulders. The biting cold immediately cut through her thin coat, but she ignored it. She approached the German shepherd carefully, speaking in soft, soothing tones. "It's okay, friend. I'm not going to hurt you. Let me help you get warm." The dog tensed as she draped the blanket over its shivering form, but then seemed to relax as the warmth enveloped it. Yasmin sat down beside the animal, her back against the cold brick wall. She was freezing without her blanket, but something about helping this creature gave her a different kind of warmth. "I know what it's like to be alone and afraid," she told the dog, reaching out slowly to stroke its head. To her surprise, the dog didn't pull away. Instead, it leaned slightly into her touch, as if starved for affection as much as it was for food. "My name is Yasmin. I don't know yours, but maybe we could keep each other company tonight." The German shepherd watched her with those intelligent amber eyes, and Yasmin felt as if the animal understood every word. As the night grew colder, Yasmin huddled closer to the dog, sharing what little body heat they could generate. Despite giving away her only protection against the cold, Yasmin felt a strange sense of peace. For the first time in a long while, she wasn't alone. When morning came, Yasmin woke to find the German shepherd sitting upright, alert and watching over her. The dog's injured paw was still held carefully off the ground, but some of the life had returned to its eyes. And surprisingly, Yasmin didn't feel as cold as she expected. The dog had somehow managed to drape part of the blanket back over her during the night. "Well, look at you being all gentlemanly," she said with a smile, reaching out to stroke the dog's fur. "I think I'll call you Samuel. You look like a Samuel to me." Samuel gave a soft woof, as if approving of his new name. "We should probably find you some food and someone to look at that paw," Yasmin said, rising stiffly to her feet. Every joint ached from the cold night, but her determination was stronger than her discomfort. "Come on, I know a place that might help." Samuel stood cautiously, testing his weight on his injured paw before deciding it was better to hobble on 3 legs. Yasmin gathered her blanket, shook off the snow and wrapped it around her shoulders again. Then, on an impulse, she tore off a strip from the edge, a piece that contained the image of a small blue bird, her grandmother's favorite creature. "Here," she said, carefully wrapping the strip of fabric around Samuel's neck like a makeshift collar. "Now you have something of mine, and I'll have someone to talk to." Together, the unlikely pair made their way through the awakening streets of Mapleton. Yasmin's destination was a small veterinary clinic run by Dr. Henry Blake, a kind-hearted man who sometimes provided free care to the pets of those who couldn't afford it. She had never asked for help herself, but she hoped his generosity would extend to a stray dog and the homeless girl who had found him. As they approached the clinic, Samuel suddenly stiffened, his ears pricking forward. A sleek black car had pulled up to the curb just ahead of them, and a tall man in an expensive-looking coat stepped out. There was something familiar about him that made Yasmin pause, ducking slightly into a doorway to avoid being seen. The man turned, and Yasmin caught a glimpse of his face, strong features framed by silver-streaked dark hair, eyes that seemed to take in everything around him with a single glance. In his hand was a leash, and he was clearly scanning the streets as if looking for something or someone. Samuel let out a low growl, the sound vibrating through his chest. "Shh," Yasmin whispered, her heart racing. "We don't want to draw attention." But it was too late. The man's gaze snapped toward them, his eyes widening in recognition, not of Yasmin, but of Samuel. "Theo," the man called, his deep voice carrying easily across the distance between them. "Theo, is that you?" Samuel, or Theo, as the man had called him, whined softly, his body tense beside Yasmin. The dog seemed torn, looking between Yasmin and the stranger who apparently knew him. "He's yours, isn't he?" Yasmin asked as the man approached, her hand instinctively tightening on the makeshift collar she had created. "Yes," the man replied, his eyes taking in Samuel's condition, the injured paw and the strip of fabric around his neck. Then his gaze moved to Yasmin, noting her worn clothes and the patchwork blanket. His expression was unreadable. "My name is Gabriel Thornton, and it seems I owe you a debt of gratitude for finding my dog." Yasmin felt a strange mixture of emotions, relief that Samuel had a home, sadness at the thought of parting with her new friend, and something else she couldn't quite identify as she met Gabriel Thornton's intense gaze. "He was alone in an alley," Yasmin said, her voice steadier than she expected. "He's hurt and hungry." Gabriel nodded, a flash of what looked like guilt crossing his features. "There was an accident. My car skidded on the ice last night, and the impact must have broken the window. Theo, Samuel, as you've named him, must have been thrown clear and run off in panic. I've been searching all night." As if to confirm the story, Yasmin noticed a fresh cut on Gabriel's forehead and the way he held himself as if nursing bruised ribs. His expensive coat was wrinkled, his shoes scuffed, not the usual immaculate appearance of a wealthy man. "You should get him to a vet," Yasmin said, taking a step back, preparing to leave now that Samuel, or Theo, had been reunited with his owner. "Wait," Gabriel said, reaching out but stopping short of actually touching her. "You've cared for him all night. You're freezing. Let me at least get you someplace warm, maybe some hot food as thanks." Yasmin hesitated, years of street-honed caution battling with the genuine concern she saw in the man's eyes. Samuel Theo nudged her hand with his nose, as if encouraging her to accept. "Just a cup of coffee," Gabriel added, his tone gentler now. "And I'd like to know how you came to find my dog. Please." There was something in his voice, a note of unexpected vulnerability, that made Yasmin nod slowly. "All right, just coffee, and maybe something for Samuel's paw." "Thank you," Gabriel said, and the relief in his voice seemed to encompass more than just her acceptance of coffee. "My car is just here, and I know the best veterinarian in town. Dr. Blake's clinic is just around the corner." As Yasmin followed Gabriel to his car, Samuel limping between them, she had no way of knowing that this chance encounter would set in motion a chain of events that would change her life forever. The mystery of who Gabriel Thornton really was, and why his dog had affected her so deeply, was just beginning to unfold. And somewhere watching from the shadows, another figure observed their meeting with great interest. Someone who had been searching for Yasmin for a very long time, someone whose motives were far from pure. The winter wind swirled around them, carrying snowflakes and secrets in equal measure, as they drove toward Dr. Blake's clinic, unaware that they were being followed. The waiting room of Dr. Blake's veterinary clinic was warm and inviting, a welcome contrast to the bitter cold outside. Yasmin sat awkwardly on a plush chair, her worn clothing and disheveled appearance at odds with the sleek, modern surroundings. Gabriel had not hesitated to use his apparent influence to get Samuel, or Theo as was his real name, immediate attention. "Mr. Thornton," the receptionist had said with wide eyes when they entered, "we weren't expecting you today." "It's an emergency," Gabriel had replied, gesturing to his limping companion. Theo was in an accident. Now, as they waited for news, an uncomfortable silence stretched between them. Yasmin clutched a steaming cup of coffee that Gabriel had procured from a nearby cafe, savoring the warmth that spread through her fingers. "Thank you," Gabriel said, suddenly breaking the silence, "for taking care of Theo. Not many would give their only blanket to a stray dog on a night like last night." Yasmin shifted in her seat. "He needed it more than I did." Gabriel studied her face, his eyes lingering on the shadows beneath hers, the subtle hollowness in her cheeks that spoke of too many missed meals. "Where do you stay? When you're not rescuing dogs, I mean." She tensed, immediately wary. "Here and there. I manage." Before Gabriel could respond, the door to the examination room opened, and Dr. Henry Blake emerged, his kind face wreathed in a smile despite the early hour. "Theo will be just fine," he announced. "A sprained paw, some minor cuts, and he's a bit dehydrated, but nothing that won't heal with proper care and rest." The relief that washed over Gabriel's face was genuine and profound. "Thank you, Henry. I can't tell you how worried I was." "You should thank this young lady," Dr. Blake said, nodding toward Yasmin. "If she hadn't found him and kept him warm through the night, exposure could have been a serious concern, especially with his injuries." Gabriel turned to Yasmin, his expression serious. "I am grateful, more than you know." Dr. Blake's gaze moved between them, a small furrow appearing between his brows. "Have we met before, miss? You seem familiar somehow." Yasmin shook her head quickly, too quickly perhaps. "No, I don't think so. I'm just passing through." The veterinarian nodded, though he didn't seem entirely convinced. "Well, Mr. Thornton, you can take Theo home now. I've bandaged his paw and given him some fluids. He should rest for at least a week, and I've prescribed some pain medication." As they prepared to leave, with Theo now looking much more comfortable despite his bandaged paw, the clinic door opened, bringing with it a gust of cold air and a woman whose beauty was as striking as it was intimidating. Her dark hair was pulled back in a severe bun, her eyes sharp and assessing, her clothes expensive and perfectly tailored. "Gabriel," she said, her voice cool but not unfriendly. "I was told I might find you here." Gabriel's posture stiffened almost imperceptibly. "Diana, how did you know where I was?" Diana's gaze flicked briefly to Yasmin, before returning to Gabriel. "Your assistant mentioned you were searching for Theo after the accident. When you didn't return my calls, I made some inquiries." She approached Theo, who was leaning against Yasmin's leg, and reached down to pat his head. The dog moved slightly away from her touch. "I see you found him." "Thanks to Yasmin," Gabriel said, gesturing to the young woman beside him. "She kept him safe through the night." Diana's scrutiny was thorough and unapologetic as she took in Yasmin's appearance. "How fortunate," she said, her tone revealing nothing of her thoughts. "Well, now that this little crisis is resolved, we need to discuss the Westridge proposal before the board meeting." Gabriel frowned. "Diana, I nearly lost Theo last night. The board can wait a few hours." "Business doesn't stop because your dog had an adventure," Diana replied, her voice softening slightly as she added, "But I'm glad he's safe." The dynamic between them was fascinating to Yasmin, who had grown skilled at reading people during her time on the streets. There was history here, complexity, maybe even tension, but also a deep familiarity. Were they colleagues, friends, more? "At least let me drive you home," Gabriel said to Yasmin, seemingly unwilling to abandon her just yet despite Diana's obvious impatience. "That's not necessary," Yasmin began, but Theo whined softly, pressing against her leg. "I insist," Gabriel said. "It's the least I can do." Diana's perfectly arched eyebrow rose slightly, but she said nothing, merely checking her watch with deliberate slowness. The ride in Gabriel's luxurious car was silent and tense, with Diana in the front passenger seat and Yasmin in the back with Theo, who seemed determined to stay close to her despite having been reunited with his owner. Yasmin had given Gabriel directions to a neighborhood not far from where she actually stayed, her instinct for self-preservation still strong despite Gabriel's apparent kindness. As they pulled up to the curb, Gabriel turned in his seat. "Yasmin, I'd like to properly thank you for what you did. Perhaps dinner sometime this week." Diana made a small, almost inaudible sound that might have been disapproval. "I don't think that's a good idea," Yasmin said, her hand resting on Theo's head. "But I'm glad Theo is okay, that's thanks enough." She moved to open the door, but Gabriel stopped her with a gentle word. "Wait." He reached into his coat pocket and withdrew a business card. "If you ever need anything at all, please call this number, day or night." Yasmin hesitated, then took the card, slipping it into her coat pocket without looking at it. "Goodbye, Theo," she whispered, giving the dog a final pat before stepping out into the cold. As the car pulled away, she caught a glimpse of Theo's face in the back window, his amber eyes watching her until the vehicle turned a corner and disappeared from sight. Alone again, Yasmin walked quickly, her mind racing. Why had Dr. Blake thought she looked familiar? Who was Diana? And what was her relationship with Gabriel? And why did she feel so reluctant to part with a dog that wasn't hers, a man she barely knew? She was so lost in thought that she didn't notice the figure following her until a voice called out her name, her full name, one she hadn't used in years. Yasmin Grace Hartley. She froze, then slowly turned. The man standing a few paces behind her was nondescript in a way that was almost deliberate. Average height, average build, forgettable features. But his eyes were sharp, missing nothing. "Who are you?" she demanded, her body tensing, ready to run if necessary. "My name is Fiona Winters," the man said. "I've been looking for you for a very long time." "I don't know any Fiona Winters," Yasmin replied, taking a step back. "No, but you knew Hazel Ellis," the man said. And the name hit Yasmin like a physical blow. Hazel Ellis, her grandmother. And more importantly, you know what she gave you before she died. Fear and confusion washed over Yasmin. "My grandmother died years ago, and she didn't give me anything except this blanket." The man's smile was thin and without warmth. "That's not entirely true, is it? Think carefully, Yasmin. Your life may depend on remembering what else she entrusted to you." As Yasmin stared at him, a fragment of memory surfaced, her grandmother's voice, weak but urgent, whispering something as she pressed a small object into Yasmin's hand. An object Yasmin had kept all these years without understanding its significance. "I don't know what you're talking about," she lied, her heart pounding. "I think you do," the man said, taking a step toward her. "And I'm not the only one looking for it. The question is, who will find it first? Those who want to protect it or those who want to use it?" Before Yasmin could respond, a familiar bark echoed down the street. Theo was running toward them, his injured paw held off the ground but his pace surprisingly fast. Behind him, Gabriel's car had stopped at an odd angle by the curb, and Gabriel himself was hurrying after his dog. The mysterious man backed away immediately, his face hardening. "Think about what I said, Yasmin, and be careful who you trust." With those words, he melted into the passing crowd. Theo reached Yasmin, positioning himself protectively in front of her, his hackles raised as he stared in the direction the man had gone. "Yasmin!" Gabriel called as he caught up. "Are you all right?" Theo suddenly went crazy, scratching at the door and barking. I've never seen him behave like that. Yasmin looked down at the dog, then up at Gabriel's concerned face. "I'm fine," she said, though her voice shook slightly. "Theo must have sensed something." Gabriel's gaze searched her face, clearly not believing her attempt at nonchalance. Who was that man? For a moment, Yasmin considered telling him everything, about the stranger, about her grandmother, about the small object she had carried for years without understanding why. But caution held her back. The man had warned her to be careful about who she trusted, and despite Theo's apparent faith in Gabriel, Yasmin wasn't ready to take that leap. Just someone asking for directions, she said finally. Gabriel frowned, clearly unconvinced, but before he could press further, Diana called from the car, her voice sharp with impatience. I should go, Yasmin said quickly. Thank you again for getting Theo to the vet. Gabriel hesitated, then nodded. At least keep my card, he said. And please be careful, Yasmin. Something doesn't feel right about this. As Gabriel reluctantly left with a very resistant Theo, Yasmin's hand went to her pocket, feeling the outline of the small key her grandmother had given her, a key she had kept all these years without knowing what it opened or why it might be important enough for someone to track her down after so long. The wind picked up, carrying with it the promise of more snow and the certainty that nothing in Yasmin's life would ever be the same again. The small key burned in Yasmin's pocket like a hot coal as she hurried through the streets, instinctively taking a winding path in case the stranger, Fiona Winters, was following her. Night was falling rapidly, bringing with it plummeting temperatures that made her shiver beneath her thin coat. Without her blanket, which was now wrapped around Theo's bandaged paw, she would face a dangerously cold night. Yasmin ducked into an old library, one of her regular havens during winter, and found a secluded corner where she could think. She pulled out the key her grandmother had given her. It was small and antique, with an unusual pattern on its head, a bird in flight, not unlike the bluebird that had adorned the strip of blanket she'd given to Theo. What were you trying to tell me, Grandma? She whispered, running her finger over the intricate design. She also examined Gabriel's business card. Gabriel Thornton, CEO, Thornton Innovations, it read, with an address in the most prestigious part of the city. On the back, he had hastily scribbled his personal number. Yasmin's thoughts were interrupted by a library assistant announcing closing time. With nowhere else to go, she reluctantly ventured back into the cold, her mind racing. Her grandmother's final words echoed in her memory. When you need it most, the key will show you the way home. She had always assumed it was the delirious rambling of a dying woman, but now, her feet carried her almost unconsciously toward the only place she had ever truly felt at home, her grandmother's old house on Maple Street. It had been sold after her death, the proceeds going to pay medical bills, leaving nothing for Yasmin except the patchwork blanket and, apparently, this mysterious key. The house looked different now, renovated with a fresh coat of paint and new landscaping. A for sale sign stood in the yard, indicating the current owners had moved on. Yasmin hesitated at the edge of the property, knowing she had no right to be there, but drawn forward by an inexplicable certainty. The back garden was sheltered from street view by tall hedges. Yasmin made her way cautiously around, finding the ornate birdhouse her grandfather had built, surprisingly still standing. It had always been her grandmother's favorite garden feature, shaped like a miniature version of their home. On impulse, Yasmin examined the birdhouse more closely. There, nearly invisible unless you knew to look for it, was a tiny keyhole beneath one of the eaves, a keyhole that matched the size of her grandmother's key perfectly. With trembling fingers, Yasmin inserted the key and turned it. A small, hidden compartment in the base of the birdhouse sprang open, revealing a waterproof pouch containing a USB drive and a yellowed envelope with her name written in her grandmother's elegant handwriting. I knew you'd find this when the time was right, the letter began. If you're reading this, it means I'm gone and you've realized the key is more than just a keepsake. What's on this drive proves that Thornton Innovations was built on stolen research that belonged to your grandfather and me. Yasmin gasped. Thornton Innovations, Gabriel's company. The letter continued. We trusted our partner Edward Thornton, but he betrayed us, claiming our joint discovery as his own while we were both in the hospital after the lab accident. I never pursued justice because I feared what might happen to you if I challenged such a powerful man. But the truth deserves to be known. Use this wisely, my darling girl. It could give you everything, or nothing, depending on who you trust. Yasmin's hands shook as she folded the letter. Her grandparents had been researchers. Their partner had been Gabriel's father. It was too much to process. A sudden noise behind her made her whirl around. Theo stood there, his amber eyes reflecting the moonlight, his injured paw held carefully off the ground. Theo, Yasmin whispered in disbelief. How did you find me? The sound of a car door closing answered her question. Gabriel appeared around the hedge, his expression a mixture of concern and confusion. "I'm sorry for following you," he said, staying at a respectful distance. "Theo was absolutely determined to find you. He kept whining at the door until I finally gave in." He glanced at the birdhouse, then back to Yasmin. "What are you doing here?" Yasmin quickly pocketed the USB drive and letter, but kept the key in her hand. "This was my grandparents' house," she said softly. Gabriel's eyes widened. "Your grandparents? What were their names?" "Hazel and Jonathan Ellis." The color drained from Gabriel's face. "Ellis? You're their granddaughter?" He took a step forward, then stopped himself. "Yasmin, you need to listen to me. There are things about your grandparents you don't know, things my father never told me until he was dying." "Like how he stole their research?" Yasmin challenged, holding up the key. Gabriel's gaze fixed on the key, recognition dawning in his eyes. "You found it," he whispered. "The proof." Before Yasmin could respond, headlights swept across the garden as another car pulled up. Diana emerged, her face tight with anger. "I knew you'd lead us to it eventually," she said, but she wasn't speaking to Gabriel. She was looking at Yasmin. "The old woman was clever hiding it all these years, but we knew her granddaughter would have the key." Gabriel stepped between them. "Diana, what are you talking about?" Diana's laugh was cold. "Did you really think I was working with you all these years? Because I believed in your vision, Gabriel. I've been waiting for this moment since your father confessed on his deathbed that the Ellis research wasn't completely destroyed." Understanding dawned on Yasmin. "You're not here for Gabriel at all, are you? You're working with Fiona Winters." "Fiona is just a hired hand," Diana said dismissively. "I represent people who have been searching for the Ellis formula for a very long time. People who understand its true value far better than either of you." Gabriel turned to Yasmin, his voice urgent. "Your grandparents discovered a revolutionary method for sustainable energy production. My father took credit for an early version, but their final breakthrough, the one that could change everything, was thought to be lost in the accident that hospitalized them." Diana stepped forward, her hand extended toward Yasmin. "The USB, please. There's no need for unpleasantness." Theo growled, positioning himself protectively in front of Yasmin. Gabriel stood his ground beside the dog, his expression resolute. "You'll have to go through both of us," he said quietly. Diana's smile was thin as she reached into her coat. "If necessary." What happened next unfolded in seconds. Diana drew a small taser, aiming it at Gabriel. Theo lunged forward despite his injury, knocking Diana off balance. The weapon discharged harmlessly into the ground as Diana stumbled backward, tripping over the garden's edge and falling hard. In the confusion, a police car pulled up, its lights illuminating the scene. Officer James Miller stepped out, his hand on his holster. "Everyone freeze," he commanded. "We received reports of trespassers." Yasmin stared in shock as a second figure emerged from the police car, Dr. Henry Blake, the veterinarian. "Hello, Yasmin," he said gently. "I knew I recognized you this morning. You have your grandmother's eyes." As Diana was helped to her feet and placed in handcuffs, Dr. Blake explained that he had been a friend of Yasmin's grandparents. "I've been keeping an eye on this property ever since Hazel passed away. When I saw you at the clinic with Gabriel Thornton, I knew it wasn't coincidence." Officer Miller added, "Dr. Blake called me when he saw lights in the garden. We've been investigating Diana Frost for months, corporate espionage, among other things." Later that night, in the warmth of Dr. Blake's home, the full story emerged. Hazel Ellis had trusted her old friend Henry with the truth before she died, asking him to watch over the property and her granddaughter, though he had lost track of Yasmin after she ran away from her last foster home. Gabriel had been searching for ways to make amends for his father's wrongdoing ever since learning the truth, but had never known how to find the Ellis heirs until a homeless young woman gave her only blanket to his dog. "The blanket," Yasmin realized suddenly. "The bluebird patch I gave Theo. That's what you recognized this morning." Henry nodded. "Your grandmother made that blanket. The bluebird was her personal symbol." Gabriel, who had been quiet for some time, finally spoke. "Yasmin, I want you to know that I'm prepared to make this right. The research on that drive belongs to your family. I'll acknowledge that publicly and ensure you receive full credit and compensation. We'll need to see what's actually on it first, Yasmin said, carefully inserting the USB drive into Henry's computer. The files revealed not only proof of the original theft, but detailed notes on the Ellis breakthrough, a method of energy production that was truly revolutionary. But most surprising was a video file, a message from Hazel Ellis herself, recorded shortly before her death. "My darling Yasmin," her grandmother's familiar face said, bringing tears to Yasmin's eyes. "If you're watching this, you've found your way home at last. The research is important, yes, but it's not why I left you the key. I left it because I wanted you to remember that no matter how lost you feel, you always have a home, in your memories, in your heart, and with those who truly care for you. The key isn't just to the past, it's to your future. Choose wisely who you trust with both." The room was silent when the video ended, each person lost in their own thoughts. 6 months later, the doors opened on the Ellis Thornton Research Center, a state-of-the-art facility dedicated to developing the sustainable energy technology Hazel and Jonathan Ellis had pioneered. Yasmin, now the foundation's director, smiled as she cut the ceremonial ribbon. With Gabriel at her side and Theo, fully recovered and officially sharing his time between both their homes, sitting proudly at their feet. Dr. Henry Blake, now head of the center's ethics committee, applauded from the front row alongside Officer Miller, whose investigation had led to Diana's conviction for industrial espionage. Fiona Winters had evaded capture, but was believed to have fled the country when his employers abandoned him. The mystery of the key had led Yasmin not only to her inheritance, but to a new purpose. The homeless girl who had once given away her only blanket to a shivering dog had found her way home at last, guided by the unexpected guardian who had sensed her grandmother's spirit in the blue bird patch around his neck. That evening, as snowflakes began to fall on the new research center, Yasmin stood by the window of her office, the patchwork blanket, now professionally restored, draped over her shoulders. Gabriel joined her, placing a gentle hand on her arm. "Your grandparents would be proud," he said softly. Yasmin smiled, watching Theo as he playfully chased snowflakes in the garden below, where a replica of her grandfather's birdhouse stood as a reminder of the journey that had brought them all together. "I think they led us to each other," she replied, "through a key, a blanket, and a very special dog." In the soft light of the falling snow, Yasmin realized that true wealth wasn't measured in research patents or corporate assets, but in second chances and the courage to trust again. She had given her blanket without expectation of reward, and fate had returned her kindness tenfold, proof that even the smallest act of compassion could set in motion changes that would echo for generations to come. And as for Theo, the German shepherd who had brought together a homeless girl and a CEO, he had found his true purpose as the beloved guardian of them both, a living reminder that sometimes the most valuable things in life are not the ones we keep, but the ones we give away. Thank you for joining me on this journey into the world of captivating stories. I trust you found today's narrative as engaging as I did. If you enjoyed this exploration into fascinating and compelling narratives, kindly indicate your appreciation by liking this video. Are you watching on mobile? Show your appreciation with a double tap for hype. For more captivating stories and journeys into the heart of compelling storytelling, please subscribe to the channel and activate notifications so you don't miss a single upload. Your thoughts and interpretations are most welcome. Please share your perspectives on today's story in the comments below. And if you believe others would find this content engaging, please consider sharing the video with your network. Until our next journey into the world of captivating tales, I bid you farewell.